All right, good morning. Good morning and welcome to the second session here in the Marine Corps Theater. We've got a very exciting and popular topic for our second session today. It's on United States Marine Corps recruiting environment. And we're very fortunate to have Brigadier General Jason Morris, who is the Commanding General of the Marine Corps Recruit Depot here in San Diego. I was asked not to go into detail about his bio, but he does have a number of years of experience in recruiting. And if you were at the keynote session this morning, you heard the Assistant Commandant talk about how important recruiting and retention is. And so we are very fortunate to have an expert in that, somebody who is right here at the where the rubber meets the road in recruiting. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Brigadier General Jason Morris. Sir?
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. Certainly benefit from having General Smith give me a couple plugs, because otherwise I wouldn't exactly know why I'm here with all this IT and comm stuff here. But I will say I was asked to talk about the Marine Corps recruiting environment, so that's what I'm going to do. And you can see from my slide, when you look at the theme of this year's AFCEA West, it talks about readiness, capability, and capacity, and how we are building that to take on our peer adversary. And so that's really what I'm going to talk about, because all of that is a pipe dream without the people that man the systems and the equipment and execute the tactics that we are all hoping will give us a position of advantage and to allow us to deter the adversary and, if necessary, fight and win. So this is a little bit of a simple but inconvenient truth that we have a need for people. And without those people, we can't do what we want to say. The all-volunteer force depends upon an American public that supports military service and willingly signs up after they've been deemed qualified to serve their nation. So I'm going to talk Marine Corps recruiting, but trust me when I say that all of the services right now are dealing with the same types of challenge that I'm going to talk about. And so this challenge, as General Smith said again, is America's problem. It's not just the Marine Corps' problem. And we've got to overcome this if we're going to match up against those future threats that everybody is concerned about. So I'm going to have a little bit of a history lesson here first. This is what I'm going to talk about, the history of the all-volunteer force, which is really a misnomer. It is the all-recruited force. I'll talk a little bit about Generation Z, or Net Gen, which is our current population that we're largely recruiting out of. Talk about the current recruiting environment and then opportunities moving forward. And as I mentioned, as is oftentimes the case, if you want to chart a path forward in a direction you want to go, you need to know where you've come from. So just a brief history lesson, and I hope I don't insult anybody's intelligence, but the Marine Corps has adapted over the last 247 years from a service that was established in 1775, largely of shipboard detachments. They would provide security at naval barracks and provide provisional forces, into a force that has gone through small wars, orientation and development, to where they were fighting irregular wars and counterinsurgency in the Caribbean and overseas, to the conventional wars that we're perhaps more familiar with in World War I, to Korea, Vietnam in some ways, and also in Desert Storm. Hybrid wars are campaigns in Iraq and Afghanistan, where you have both conventional and unconventional fights. And then since 1986, we have been America's force in readiness. Under Goldwater-Nichols, an amphibious expeditionary air-ground logistics task force, And now, as General Berger has put us moving forward on a path for Force Design 2030 to make sure that we can address and compete with our pacing threat. So with all that change over the last 247 years, we've created a modern-day Marine Corps largely over the last 50 years that really was created from the all-volunteer force, and that came after the Vietnam War. So in 1973, after 7 years of conventional and counterinsurgency warfare in Vietnam, the American people, the American president basically said, enough, we're going to turn this over to the Vietnamese people, and we are going to do away with a draft. We had a draft in a number of places during our history, World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, but as we looked to pull out of Vietnam, the draft was no longer desired. So the American people were disillusioned with the government, with the war, and in some cases with the military. And internally, the services dealt with a significant number of disciplinary and cultural issues. Externally, the Corps, as it has often been, was under attack from those who questioned, again, the viability of the amphibious mission and the Corps' need for its own separate aviation arm. And the Corps, along with the other services, when told to find the people that are going to fill your ranks, was really unprepared for that task. They were undermanned, under-resourced. It was not seen as a desirable duty. And there was rampant malpractice as the services tried to find young people that were qualified to serve. I talk about 1973 here. 2 years later, in 1975, the Marine Corps had missed its mission by about 5,000. It only made up of 50% high school graduates that were coming into the service. There were many regular drug users. There were convicted felons that were being brought into the service. And the Marine Corps in 1975 had 18,000 deserters. So almost a Marine division was deserting every year because they just did not want to be there. So significant challenges. Fortunately for the Marine Corps had some stalwart senior leaders who were able to steer the ship through the shoal waters over the next 2 decades. And the pictures here are in the upper left of General Lew Wilson, on the upper right, General Bob Barrow, on the bottom left, General Mundy, and on the bottom right, General Krulak. These generals laid the groundwork for the successful recruiting effort that would happen over the next really 30 to 40 years. General Wilson had to restore faith in the service after an incident at MCRD San Diego where a recruit was actually killed with pugil sticks. He did so by reforming the entry-level training process. He increased the amount of supervision. He spent a lot of effort making sure that the drill instructors were selected and screened properly to make sure we didn't have any sociopaths in the ranks that like to abuse people. And that gradually made progressive change at the depots to where we were training the recruits more professionally and with a great deal more care, although we did continue to maintain our tough standards. We also made recruiting reforms under General Wilson and Barrow. We created this guidebook of systematic best practices called what we now use the term systematic recruiting. We were very selective in the people that we brought onto recruiting duty. There was a national training team that was formed that took these best practices, codified that, and went station by station around the country to make sure that we were systematically recruiting from the American population to find the very best qualified people. There was an effort to develop leaders, officers, and staff non-commissioned officers to know what this system was all about so we could do it in a professional and efficient manner. And we did focus very highly on accessions quality not just quantity. And over time, we raised the standards to where 99% of who we bring in the service, which is where we are right now, are in fact high school graduates. We bring in college graduates as well. Physical fitness is much more emphasized on the front end to make sure that we have people that when they show up to boot camp can complete the program of instruction, not get hurt, and not fall out. They have what it takes to be a United States Marine. And we started putting our very best people on the streets of America to represent the Marine Corps, because as we found, you recruit who you are. And if you put good people out there, it attracts good people. And the Marine Corps has continued to do that. So over time, over the period of about 20 years, those reforms resulted in the Marine Corps that served in Desert Shield and Desert Storm and was extremely successful during that very short campaign. In 1994, General Krulak created the Marine Corps Recruiting Command in order to get unity of effort and unity of command under one headquarters. And General Krulak subsequently raised the standards and put, as I said, our best people, now our best commanders, out on the street in command of the recruiting force. And it was extremely taxing on the service to take our very best officers to put them out on a recruiting, which in many cases is looked upon as a second-tier duty from the other services, but we felt like we needed to put our best foot forward because that would pay off. And to quote General Barrow, when he was a commandant, he said, quote, "In peacetime, the most important thing the Marine Corps can do is to recruit well." So part 3 of the history lesson is our long wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, really post 9/11. After 9/11, the Marine Corps managed to build on its previous investments and continue its success. And despite a very short period of time where we struggled because during the initial Iraq counterinsurgency campaign, we focused everything we had on making sure that those war fighters were supported as we should. We lost the bubble a little bit on recruiting. In 2005, the Marine Corps Recruiting Command missed mission for the last time. And that was because we were not focused necessarily on what was happening on our sessions mission, but on sending people forward into the fight and to make sure that they were properly resourced. Advertising took a hit, and when you don't advertise and market military service in the Marine Corps, oftentimes people just aren't paying attention and they don't even know what the service has to offer. So the Marine Corps corrected itself, put 600 more recruiters on the street, reinforced its advertising effort, and began to build itself out of the hole that it was in. It surged up to 202,000 Marines to meet the requirements of rotating in and out of Iraq and Afghanistan. And we met our 2002 goal in about 2 or 3 years, 2 years earlier than we expected. The key ingredients for success have remained an institutional commitment to resourcing, to investing our best people in the recruiting effort, to keeping this systematic recruiting process alive and well polished, and ultimately protecting our brand as one of the elite military professional organizations in the world. And recruiting and then transforming American civilians into Marines remains fundamental to our institutional health. And said another way, one of General Smith's predecessors, General Walt Boomer, who was a former district commander and a former assistant commandant, said, quote, "We have proved that our recruit training, as good as it is, cannot turn unintelligent, poorly motivated, physical wrecks into Marines. Recruiting high-quality applicants for the Corps is terribly expensive, but the price of not doing so is disaster." So now I've reviewed the Corps' journey from the beginning of the all-volunteer force 50 years ago this year, and I'm going to turn to the current recruiting environment and our target population, Generation Z, also known as the Net Generation. So you may wonder what Gen Z is. Well, this is our target population, and you can see up here, hopefully I won't turn this off, oh, it works. Up here on the top, ages 10 to 25, I think this was 2020 data. You can see they were born starting in 1997 and continue to be born through 2012. It is a smaller cohort of the American people. That's something I want to point out because that's important. Some of the defining features of this generation, they grew up after 9/11. There may have been a handful that were 4 years old when 9/11 happened, but most of them happened after that. All they know is the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and then post-Afghanistan withdrawal. They are digital natives, so they are literally born with a device in their hand. You can see them at restaurants and everywhere else, not talking to each other, but staring down at their device and losing their eyeballs and probably their minds a little bit. But that's who we're dealing with. And out of 175,000 Marines or so currently on active duty, over 150,000 Marines are Gen Zers. So the vast majority of the force is Gen Z, which provides some risk, but also some opportunities. And you can see here that Gen Z really are the sons and daughters of Gen Xers. I fall into that category, but we went through a period where we were recruiting millennials. They are now starting to have children as well that are growing up and will still or will soon be part of the population that we're recruiting from. So how do you summarize Gen Z? These quotes come from a Wunderman-Thompson study, Strategic Foundation Data Review published in 2021. Quote, they are adaptable problem solvers who are resilient and interested in belonging. They are the most diverse generation. They don't necessarily believe in American exceptionalism. They value equity and inclusion. They are politically and socially active. As I mentioned, they have technology that shapes their existence. They tend to be risk adverse. Think about living in their parents' basements or not wanting to perhaps be put in a position where they may not get some sort of trophy for their participation. They feel anxious and pressured primarily because of some of the things that we have dealt with recently in our history between the terrorist attacks of 9/11, the 2008 Great Recession, and all these threats to their safety and security. Those are things that cause them uncertainty and some sort of anxiety. But they do see themselves as creative. So some key findings that the Marine Corps Recruiting Command put out in terms of with Gen Z, how did COVID impact their experience? Well, it had a positive impact on the way they interact with their parents. We had our kids move back into the house during a couple years of COVID, like many parents did. It did have a negative impact on their mental health. And it had a negative impact on participation in extracurricular activities because many things were canceled. So while the military is viewed favorably by Gen Z, 41% favorably and 25% unfavorably, first responders and teachers are actually viewed much more favorably and both enjoy favorability ratings that are higher than the military. So they believe that good citizens should help others wherever they live, and aren't so inclined to join the military. So those are some findings of Gen Z. In terms of what they're looking to do with their lives, they certainly want to live on their own. They want to do something that they can be proud of. They want to have a job or career that aligns with their political views, but that is ranked as least important. So they believe in being in an environment free from danger, which is important. which of course runs counter to military service. They're not interested in having an interesting job over one that's more routine. Interesting comment there. And finally, they believe the military should be more humanitarian and help people, which of course is what we do as a part of crisis response and humanitarian assistance and disaster response. But it doesn't necessarily play well when we talk about lethality and going to kill people, which is ultimately what we may have to do in wartime. So I already talked about this briefly, Gen Z's presence in the Joint Force. This is all services, not just the Marine Corps. Like I said, the Marine Corps is much more heavily weighted to a younger force, sergeants and below, company grade officers. But you can see here in the entire Joint Force, almost 52% of the service enlisted members are Gen Zers. 14% of our active duty officers, typically in the company grade, are Gen Zers. And you can see as the numbers go down, as you increase in age, you have disconnects between cohorts and generations there, between senior officers and our young Gen Zers. And the average age of the Marine Corps today is 25.2 years old, the enlisted force 24 years old. But this is something that we continue to have to deal with, not just on the recruiting side, but on the retention side. Most Marines sign up for 4 years. Some sign up for 5 or 6 years, but the majority of Gen Zers have already come into the service and are leaving the service already to move on to other things. So I mentioned earlier about the fact that the cohort of Gen Zers was smaller than the cohort in the population of millennials. Why is that important? Because in the recruiting business, you start with a much larger population that you are trying to work through, separating the wheat from the chaff. In this case, we are starting with a population of about 33 million American 17 to 24-year-olds. This is 7 million people smaller than the millennial generation. So you're looking for a much smaller portion of the population. Out of those 32.8 million, only 7.5 million are actually qualified for military service. Only 23%. Hello, ma'am. So obviously you start to neck these numbers down significantly, and I'll go into the reasons why that is in a little bit. Qualified military applicants, break that down even more. So the delta between those is those that are going to college versus those that are not. And then you have a smaller number who are actually propensed to serve, meaning they are thinking about serving. So you can see this necks down significantly, and we quickly get down to a number where we're fighting over a very small piece of the population between the services, between Amazon, between Microsoft, between In-N-Out Burger, between Chipotle, whoever it is that's trying to hire young men and women to serve in their workforce. We're competing with them all. So I talked a little bit about disqualifications. You can see here, this portion of the population, only 23% is eligible to serve. The others are disqualified for either multiple reasons or one reason. Overweight. You know, it's easier to buy a 2-gallon or a 2-liter bottle of Mountain Dew and, you know, pay $1.59 for that, as well as a box of donuts, than it is to buy some sort of good food or fast food. I mean, a lot of obesity in the nation, unfortunately. Medical and physical disqualifications for things like ADHD or ADD, mental health challenges. We encourage people to get help, but once we encourage them to get help, it's in their medical record. And then we've got to sort through that. Drug abuse. 38 states in the nation right now have authorized or put into law legal recreational use of marijuana. 22 states are 22 are recreational use, which is legal, 38 medical authorization. And then you can see there's also some conduct, think felons, think people that have long criminal records that we don't want serving in our uniforms, and then others that have dependents or that just can't pass the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery because COVID had impacts on our schooling, and we saw a fairly dramatic decrease in the test rates because guess what? Online learning, you're not learning all that much. Another thing that we're dealing with is decreasing favorability. So this comes from a Jammers report. The Office of Secretary of Defense puts out every year or two a survey of young people across the country from various different demographic backgrounds and asks them questions. You can see here we have had a drop in favorability of the U.S. military, although it's picked up over the last year. Not sure exactly why that is, but it's still fairly low overall in the population. Decreasing propensity, I already talked about this. You can see this fluctuate. These are single-digit numbers. Bottom line takeaway is here, it's been low for a long, long time. 10% or less of the American people want to serve in the military, and that has dropped over the last few years, although again it spiked up here over the last year. Not sure why that is, but it is still a fight every day to generate interest in people of age. And if you break that down from the Marine Corps, the most challenging service in the United States military, there are even fewer people that want to serve. So you can see here the numbers. That propensity has continued to fall, although we try and raise that each and every day within the recruiting force. So these are some of the challenges that we've been dealing with, and I'll go back to this slide that you saw again. About 1%, maybe 1.5% of the 17 to 24-year-olds in America are qualified and propensed to serve. 400, let's say, and 12,000 Americans, and the Marine Corps itself is trying to contract, meaning convince them to join the service and sign a contract saying that they will ship and go through recruit training and serve a career or serve an obligated service period of 4 to 6 years in the military. We're trying to recruit 45,000 of them to ship to recruit training, about 36,000 a year. So 0.1% of that total population is really what we're looking for, but we are in fact challenged to do that. So those current recruiting challenges, I think I talked a little bit about that. Coming out of COVID, actually the economy has done really, really well. We had the lowest national unemployment rate since 1969 right now. When I go out and talk to groups, talk to business leaders, talk to elected officials, talk to nonprofits, everybody is looking for qualified people that want to work. And so that is a challenge. There's a large number, I've read somewhere as many as 7 million men in particular, who are sitting out of the job force right now, waiting for a reason to come back. Whatever that reason is, I don't know. Maybe they're sitting in mom's and dad's couch, living in their basement, and they're pretty damn comfortable. Until that money runs out, they're not going to make a move. But still, we are very much in a fight for entry-level employment. Other businesses are offering signing bonuses to include the other services. Wages have gone up. So just a couple of years ago, the minimum wage in California was $15 an hour. Now it's $16.30, and we have places like In-N-Out paying people $20 to $21 to make fries. So people aren't having to make a lifestyle change. They're making pretty good money just doing what they've always been doing, and there's not really that incentive to serve. And then other companies have also cracked the nut on covering tuition for community college or four-year college if people work there. So these are all benefits that the Marine Corps historically offered in a unique manner that are now being used by other companies and other industries to try and compete for the workforce. Other military services, like I said, enlistment and shipping bonuses. The U.S. Army, God bless them, was offering last year $50,000 to sign up and another $35,000 to ship that month. So an $85,000 check just to go to recruit training. Maybe there were some strings attached to that. I'm not sure. If you got to at least graduate from recruit training. But that failed to really sway the numbers a whole lot. So that tells me that it is really not a issue of money, it's an issue of desire and interest in serving. And then we've got these unintentional messages of victimhood that are echoed around the media space, not just by the media, but by some of our elected officials. Things like, if my daughter joins the Marine Corps, she's going to be sexually assaulted. You know, even though sexual assault is a problem across America, in colleges, it is everywhere. If my son joins the Marine Corps, he's going to end up broken, unemployed, and homeless, holding a cardboard sign on a street corner. Absolutely not the case, but this is the message in the media that unfortunately has taken hold, and a lot of people think that is actually the case. COVID-19 I talked briefly about, but the impact on recruiting that it had was, whereas the Marine Corps makes its money in the high schools, showing a uniform, talking to young men and women about Marine Corps opportunities before they have a chance to graduate, and just giving them an alternative option besides the college option that is being rammed down their throat by their counselors and educators. And it may not be for everyone, but that's what they're expected to do in their mind. We lost access for a year, in some cases up to 2 years. Sports and clubs were shut down. Decreased ASVAB scores I talked about, and between the COVID vaccine mandate and also some of the other lockdown events, there was decreased trust in the United States government writ large. There has also been a perception in the military that we have become more politicized. So senior military leaders, both active and retired, have stepped onto the political stage, not necessarily as an elected official. That creates an opinion in the public's eye that perhaps the military is becoming more political in nature. There are reports of wokeism. The military is becoming the arm of social welfare reform and initiatives. Again, those are reports, perceptions. Whether there's truth to it, I'm not going to make a statement here today, but that is a perception that is out there in some populations. And like I said, the tragedy of the COVID vaccine challenge that we had in the military was that it was politicized. And so whether it's politicizing getting a vaccine and turning some people off from joining, or the fact that the NDAA just recently said that we are not going to require the COVID vaccine anymore. Now it's law, we can offer it but not make it a requirement. That has confused a lot of people in the United States about what is the military doing and what's going on. That affects military recruiting and what mom and dads and individuals are willing to advise their kids in terms of how they're going to move forward with that decision. So, the current state of recruiting. Despite our challenges, we made our shipping mission last year, and we maintained our standards, although our start pool declined by about 23%. So the start pool is the percentage of people already contracted that will ship out the next fiscal year, and what percentage of the numbers of shippers that we need to complete that mission. that decrease of 23% is significant. That means a lot of recruiters were looking for individuals to not just contract, but ship out in the next 1 or 2 months. Sometimes recruiters are sending people that they met 2 weeks ago, and they are showing up at the depot. They had not even met their recruiter a month ago, and now they are being shipped to recruit training. So we don't like that, because we want to make sure that young men and women have time in what we call the delayed entry program to work out, to study their knowledge with the recruiter, to get introduced to the military environment, to make sure that they have the best opportunity to graduate from recruit training and continue on with their path in the service. I would say that this year it continues to be challenging. We're working through it, but it is a fight. And I'll get more to that in terms of how you can help, who's ever here listening, in the future. Fortunately for us, I think the intangibles still resonate with a lot of young men and women in the nation. I talked a little bit about Generation Z, their desire for a sense of belonging, their desire to be part of something bigger than themselves and to have a challenge. And those are all things that we can leverage as Marines, because that is what the Marine Corps delivers. Our brand is about a challenge. It is about serving your nation. It's about providing a sense of belonging to young people that may not get that at home or within their communities. And of course, there's always travel and adventure. In peacetime, those are generally nice places to go. In wartime, sometimes not so nice, but you get travel and adventure one way or the other when you sign up. So bottom line is, we've got to work harder to find qualified prospective applicants, but we've got to also leverage technology and our messaging to make sure that we're hitting people where they are. We just did the Super Bowl. I'm not sure I saw a Marine Corps commercial during the Super Bowl. Probably too expensive for us to put $7 million towards 30 seconds. But we've got to be much more precise and accurate and competitive in terms of how we are advertising, and we're working on that. So Gen Z is unlike previous generations in that it has a diminished call to service, especially in a time of peace. They are less attracted to the elite warfighting image of the Marine Corps, and fewer meet the basic requirements to enlist. So as I said, we've got to work harder. We got to think outside the box to find people where they are and to get in front of every young man or woman we possibly can and talk to them about opportunities that the Marine Corps has to offer them, and also just talk about the value of military service. So opportunities moving forward. Before I stop and take some questions, this is what I need you and the extended audience here to do as you look at a lot of these IT and C2 wares. Because as I said before, all that's great, but if you don't have the people to man them and actually operate them, that's not going anywhere. I need everybody that's out there to encourage young people to consider the benefits and opportunities of serving their nation in uniform. It remains, in my opinion, America's most accessible character, experience, and leadership development program. Influencers of all types need to speak about those same benefits and opportunities across America, not just the recruiting force. The leadership of the Marine Corps knows this. They're trying to be more proactive in terms of getting out and speaking across America. But school boards, Rotary clubs, chambers of commerce, veterans and Memorial Day events, all those can impact an individual's awareness of military service and of the value of military service. I would say seek opportunities to allow recruiters access to schools and to get the names of young people so they can reach out and talk to them. And that may be, a sensitive issue for a lot of parents. I know nobody wants them being cold called. However, we're going to make contact with the young men and women anyway. So rather you have it do it on your terms. So we need to convince the schools to allow recruiters to come in a controlled manner to make sure that they present opportunities to young people while they're thinking about what they're going to do. Perhaps more relevant for you all here at West is to hire military veterans into businesses and organizations and really showcase all the goodness that comes out of military service and those success stories of our military veterans in organizations and life. There are probably a lot of other opportunities. I ran out of room here, but I would tell you that this, as General Smith said, is America's problem. The all-volunteer force is under threat right now because we are having challenges recruiting enough people to maintain the ranks. We are doing okay in the Marine Corps, but we're challenged. The other services, the U.S. Army, for example, missed their mission by almost 20,000 last year. That is more than an infantry division. And when you look at what's good for the nation and the fact that we are competing with peer adversaries that sometimes challenge us in not just kit, but the numbers of people, that is a problem. So I'd ask for your help, and I am now finished with my comments, and I'll open it up for any questions if you have them. Thank you very much.
Sir, thank you for the time. You touched a lot on recruiting, young people out of high school and all that. But what about retention? Are you guys focused on retention of people currently in the military or currently in the Marines, and how you can keep them, retain them? Can they sign them for another 4 years, another 2 years? I'd just like to hear something on that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, great question. So I tried to keep it focused on recruiting. I could talk about Talent Management 2030, about Training Education 2030, which was just published. But retention is critical. The assistant commandant talked about the fact that we're trying to keep people really in the 5 to 9, 5 to 10 year mark. The experience that we're looking for in terms of the maturing of the force that is discussed in Talent Management 2030 really comes with niche MOSs where once we invest hundreds of thousands of dollars in their education and training. Think Cisco server training, Microsoft training, turning wrenches on F-35s, being an F-35 driver, operating a $10 million piece of radar equipment. We need to retain those individuals. And so the challenge that we really have is in certain key billets, leadership billets, and also I'd say niche technology fields that we're trying to field to generate that competitive advantage over our peer adversary. And we're looking at different ways to do that. Bonuses are always an option. Money works, especially when you're competing against companies that are going to throw $200,000 or $300,000 of signing bonuses at people to go serve at some IT corporation. But most Marines don't do it for the money. They do it for the reward and the benefit of continuing to serve their nation and the people they work with. But we are looking at other options. Lateral entry was brought up. I think we have discovered that it is probably not necessarily bringing people in from industry without having gone through recruit training or officer candidate school, but working those that have already served and have already earned the title Marine, that have gotten out and are now serving in industry, to bring them back in to make sure that they are the ones who, now that they've got that real world experience and that up-to-date at quals and certs, now they're coming in and serving with us, whether it's in a reserve capacity or an active duty capacity. And then retention requires leadership to give a damn about people and to spend time with them, to talk to them about what their interests are, what opportunities exist, and then going out of their way to make sure that they are getting what they want while the needs of the service are still maintained. So we're looking at a lot of different things. I think the reality for the recruiting force is, we might want to see our recruiting mission go down by half because we're going to retain all these people. I think the reality is our recruiting mission may go down by 1% or 2%, but that's who we're retaining, is the 1 or 2% of people that are going to be the staff sergeant to gunny, or the captain, the major, that we really need to provide that 2 to 3 or 4 year level of experience so the service gets its return on investment. So hopefully that answers your question. Yeah. Any other questions?
Hi, sir. Thank you for the presentation. What is the Marine Corps doing to increase the number of eligible young people to recruit from, if anything?
Well, that's a great question, and that's probably the challenge of the day. I think increasing the number of qualified people is going to take a societal effort, first of all. When some of us grew up, there was this thing called the Presidential Fitness Program. And Arnold Schwarzenegger was actually brought on to talk about it and encouraging young people to stay fit. I don't know if I've heard anything about that program in decades. So first off, it is a societal issue. Now, what is the Marine Corps and what are the services doing? I think we are trying to increase awareness in every community that we are serving in right now about what's required to serve if you want to, making sure people are staying in school. That's why that first contact between a recruiter and a young man and woman in high school is so important, to tell them, hey, these are the requirements. If you want to serve, you've got to meet these requirements. So don't go out and get a tattoo all over your face. Stay out of trouble. Join the sports team. Don't be hanging out on the street. I mean, that sounds very, very simple, but we're having to do that one individual at a time. And the occasions that I talked about to speak amongst influencers and out in the community is terribly important, because ultimately it's not just the moms and dads that are helping to encourage young people to take a certain path. It's also other professional groups. Think Black Engineers of America. Think Latino groups that are focused on professionalism and developing people within their community to go on a certain path, go to college, get an engineering degree. We are really trying to reach out to all of those community influencers to talk about the benefits of military service and give them a brief kind of rundown on what the requirements are. And if they want to serve, then they need to keep those things in mind. So I think, our challenge is going to be something that we're going to need help from Congress on. I think there are discussions amongst our service leaders with Congress to talk about the challenges that we're having. I know the Department of Defense is talking to the Department of Education to talk about high school access, to talk about the importance of offering the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery this test, which is really just a career path assessment. For some reason, we got to call it the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery, but really what that can be used to do for all students is to tell them what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and where they would be best served moving forward in terms of what industry or area of study they would most benefit from. So those are some of the things that we're doing, but we're going to need a lot of help, not just from industry, but from Congress, from the Moms and Dads of America, from all the groups out there that are interested in our youth. That's what we're doing on a daily basis. And ultimately right now, we can't rely upon this big surge of advertising, during the prime time hours or even on social media, we're having to generate propensity, one contact, one appointment, one interview at a time between a recruiter and a young man or woman on the streets of America. Hopefully that answered your question. Thanks. Anything else? Yes, sir.
In Dallas, my church, we organize what we call military service days.
Yep.
But one of the challenges we've been having is getting representation from the Marine Corps and the Air Force to attend. The Army and the Navy is all in. We have one coming up in 2 weeks. We have actually 2 Army generals showing up to present.
My business card.
So I would love to have more representation from the Marine Corps and the Air Force, because it takes us weeks just to get the basic recruiters to come out. And we'll have 200-300 kids from churches around Dallas, and we may only have the Navy show up or the Army show up. So
Yeah, that's a great point, and thanks for bringing that up, sir. I mean, I would tell you, typically we don't recruit at churches.
well, we usually do them on Saturdays, so it doesn't.
Right,
feel
it
like a
doesn't
church
conflict
event.
with your
Yeah.
services. But I would tell you that there are a lot of patriots who go to church that want to help raise awareness within their populations.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a recruiter from Dallas there, from the Marine Corps, that's going to be a problem here for that recruiting station commander in the next month. But I'll get your name,
Yes,
and I'll pass your contact information to them, and they'll have somebody there.
excellent.
But thank you very much.
Morning, sir. I'm Captain Shea. I'm a communications officer in the Marine Corps. I wanted to ask, actually, you talked about the ASVAB and how Gen Z is a very technical, digital communications is definitely in their lives, and they're very good at figuring out those digital problems. And to everybody here, it's AFCEA, we have all of these digital problems to solve. And as a commo, some of the favorite people that I want to get recruited and end up under my command are like young people who do technical things and digital things for fun. So ASVAB is very like knowledge based, and skills or knowledge that you've retained from previous experiences, either from family or from school. But a lot of what I'm looking for is the ability to tinker around in either code or configurations, a type of mindset. So is there something that MCRIC and recruiting is looking for, those types of individuals, less with knowledge of what they already know and how they think, so that we can take that at Access, which is the second biggest school that we have, and put that mind out into the Marine Corps?
Hey, that's a great point, Captain. Thanks for bringing that up. So the ASVAB needs to be renormed and reworked, and we are in the process of doing that. One of the things that Talent Management 2030 identified is a list of concepts of how a talent management program should run. You've probably read it, and you probably remember that it says talents can be identified and developed. That's one of the tenets of talent management. So I think you're right. We need to do a better job in terms of trying to identify somewhere, whether it's in the recruiting process or whether it's in the entry-level pipeline, what skill sets individual Marines are bringing in that they may not have even signed up to do, but because they have that natural talent, would benefit the service with those skills once they're developed. And whether they take night classes or go to college to go continue to develop those skills, or whether they're identified to potentially lat move into those MOSs and go to those schools after a couple years, that's something that we need to do better. And I think that's not lateral entry, because that's outside into the Marine Corps, but that would be a much better use of our talent. And I think we would be looking for ways on, what skills do you need, identify those, and then figure out a way to screen those in the recruiting process. And I think we can work with you to try and get better at identifying those skill sets so we can leverage those in the force. So thanks very much for bringing that up.
Thank you, General.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, sir. So I'm an old 0402 and probably close to the same age. I saw the chess commercial and I was down at the OSO's
There you
office
go.
the next day. So we got to bring that back. But how often, sir, do you get the opportunity to work with industry, wherein industry hires a lot of former military? We do a fair amount of that where I work today. I work for a software company, but we have a group called NS2 Serves where we bring in former military, bring them into the commercial software world, train them up, et cetera. Is that a recruiting tool that the Marine Corps could use to say, hey, yeah, you can make $21 working it in and out, or look at the military history, or look at the history of someone who's come out of the military and what they can do compensation-wise, career-wise after that?
Yeah, so I think the question is, are we looking at ways to work with industry
Yes,
to
sir.
either bring people in or...
Well, to bring people in the Marine Corps as a waypoint to something beyond that.
Yeah, so I think, we don't work necessarily with an individual company to do that. I think the Transition Readiness Seminar, that TRS, is the opportunity where there are job fairs where we try to link people up, people being Marines who are getting ready to transition out of the service, with companies that are interested in hiring. I think we could probably do a better job getting that word out, making sure that individuals that are getting ready to transition are given the broadest opportunity to apply to different companies and different areas of industry that could leverage their talents. I also think that there may be opportunities for us to partner in some way to help raise the level of expertise of our active duty forces in partnership with industry. And I know we have some fellowship programs. Those are typically for more senior officers, majors, lieutenant colonels, even colonels. But certainly I think there is an opportunity there to, whether it's a sabbatical or whether it's some other period of TAD where we could move or provide an opportunity for young Marines to spend time in industry developing real world experience, real world capability, and bringing that back to the service. I don't know if that's an internship or what you would want to call that, but I think there are opportunities to do that. I'll make a mental note of that and see if we can expand that. But thanks for bringing that up. All right, I'm fighting against chow time here, so I know the attention span is dropping perhaps, but perhaps one opportunity, one last question. No, I wore you out. All right, hey, thanks for listening to this spiel. As I said, this is really, right now, the existential fight for the Marine Corps, is making sure that we can find young men and women who are qualified and willing to serve and capable of earning the title Marine to meet our end strength requirements and fill our ranks in the jobs and at the skill levels required to man what the Marine Corps is calling the Future Force 2030. All of those aspirations that are going to be talked about at these panels with multi-domain operations, with thickening kill webs, all that stuff are really fantastic ways of building advantage over our adversaries, but without the people required to do it, we're going to go nowhere. Or at least we're going to go somewhere, and we're not going to really have enough to get past the initial engagement. Because as you all have seen in the news over the last almost year, no war starts and is over quickly. They tend to go, especially nation state on nation state, for a long time, and they go in different directions, and we are going to have a need to continue to recruit and develop our young men and women into capable warfighters over a period of months and years, and that requirement is not going away. So thanks very much for your time, and Mike, appreciate it. Have a great day.
Yes, thanks a lot, General Morris, for the the brief and education on Marine Corps recruiting and the challenges. So we do have our homework here. Your homework assignment is up here. So I do ask that you take that serious. I'm a vet. I'm an Air Force guy, and I do want to talk to you afterwards, sir, about your challenge there in Dallas. But, sir, thanks again for your time today. And how about another round of applause for General Morris,
Thank you.
please?
If you know anybody who wants to be a Marine, let me know. Hoorah.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.